If you are here to hear customer product fit. What does agriculture want and need? And you know, it's interesting, when we started our Silicon Valley AgTech group 6 years ago, the problem that we created this group to deal with was exactly this issue. Here in Silicon Valley, we're technology lawyers, and I would see a lot of my clients building really cool gadgets that nobody wanted. They solved problems that didn't really exist. And so we created the group to put the farming community together with the technologists. As you know, it's grown to much more than that since then, but that certainly was our #1 problem. Today we've got a panel that's going to be moderated by Magenheim, one of the very first people I met in this space years ago at another conference down in Salinas. He's with a company called AgTech Insight. He grew up in the agricultural industry with his family's agricultural irrigation system down in the Salinas area. And he is an agronomist, and he also now has become a leader in the AgTech movement. He speaks around the world. He knows everybody, and he is here to moderate our panel, Customer Product Fit. Buddy, it's all yours.
All right, thanks.
Hey there, how are you? Good to see you. Thanks. See you.
All right, well, good morning, everybody. I am Magenheim, and thanks, Roger. Like you said, this event was actually my eye-opener to Silicon Valley, got me out of Salinas and kind of agriculture, and last few years completely changed every aspect of my life, learning about what technology has to offer. I used to come to the city to fly out of the airport, and that was it, and now I spend a couple days a week up here working with startups, investors, and helping people understand what is needed in technology. I spent a lot of time in South America, Latin America, as well as Asia, doing tech transfers, both directions, and see a lot of opportunity to bring technology both both in and outside of our country. So if you look at everything else in your life, it's a worldwide economy, and agriculture is no different. The panel that we have today is going to be a great panel, a diverse group of panelists here with different backgrounds, and I'll let everybody say a little bit about themselves and then roll into some questions, and we'll open up for questions at the end as well. So anyways, thank you for being here, and excited to spend the next hour talking about product fit. It's one of the hardest things, one of the reasons we haven't seen too many billion-dollar valuations or unicorns coming out of this industry yet. It's coming. It's just a matter of taking the right steps moving forward. So anyways, I'll go ahead and let the panel introduce themselves, and we'll go from there.
Great. Well, my name is Karsten Temme, and I'm the founder and CEO of Pivot Bio. We're up in Berkeley, kind of spun out of some of the research I had done here in the Bay Area for graduate school. The quick 1-minute overview of Pivot. We work mainly out of the Midwest. We build a microbe that produces nitrogen for corn and wheat, some of the other major row crops. And we believe that biology can do more than chemistry. So a couple of weeks ago at another conference up the street, we announced our Intent to Pivot program. Really the goal to get our first commercial product in the hands of growers across the Midwest and ensure that we're designing something that fits into their practice and eliminates work. Because for us, I think it's not only do we have to add more functionality, but we have to make it the right economics to generate an ROI, and these microbes have to make life easier. So that's our goal, and I'm loving the topic and a chance to dig more into the details with everybody.
My name is Brandon Morris. I'm a third-generation farmer from Kern County. A beautiful area, really cool temperatures in June, July, so I would encourage a lot of you to visit during that time. My family started farming a long time ago in Arkansas. They farmed cotton in that area, That didn't work out too well, so my grandfather moved to California, and that was in the early, in the 50s, late 40s. So they got a bright idea to start trying to farm cotton and alfalfa, which were really high-value crops back then. That was a tough slog. So in the 70s, 80s, almond production started to take off, and they did a service business, custom almond harvesting in the Central Valley, mostly in the McFarland, Delano area. And that was a lot better than farming cotton. And finally, we figured out that we could do a little bit better actually farming the almonds ourselves. So that's what we do now. I started with my family about 5 years ago. I went to UC Davis and studied with Dr. Patrick Brown, one of the best plant scientists in the world. Great guy, we share ideas. Just a phenomenal system there with the UC. And I started working with my family because no one else would have me. So it was the only job I could get at the time. And then it's gone okay. So we've had some struggles the last few years trying to adopt some new technologies. We'll share some of that. I'll share some of that with you. But with that said, we've also had some successes. So I think we can pull some stuff from our experience and talk about that. So happy to participate.
Morning, everybody. I'm James Mann from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. I'm a fourth-generation farmer. My great-great-grandparents moved to Saskatchewan, Canada, many decades ago, I guess over a century ago, and pioneered the land. And we're still farming on the family farm. It's expanded from those days. But most importantly, it wasn't about 23, 24 years ago, I was having a conversation with a good friend of mine, Dr. Andy Schmitz, at a conference called Farming for Profit. And Andy hails from UBerkeley. He was in the Ag Econ department and had wrote a paper on how rents or who earns the funds inappropriately or unequally in the supply chain, and became the Van Vliet Chair in the Ag Economy department at the U of S. So anyway, we got talking. He'd written a book on grain cartels, and I've been frustrated throughout my life as a farmer that we could never get our fair share of the food pipeline. At that time, it was 35 cents out of every dollar was going to farmers. Today, I think it's 9 cents or even a little under. So the problem that I've seen in farming and farmers, and an issue that I think everybody that eats food in the world, is profitability for the farmer and the ability to maintain a very productive and efficient farming system, primarily the family farm. So we developed a structure where farmers could work together. We've called it Farmers of North America, to be able to negotiate better in the marketplace. That was our first attempt to change how the markets work. That didn't work so well. I got still a bruises of being kicked out of the door of the fertilizer and chemical companies way back then. And so we decided we would start to invest up and down the value chain, and we've created generic crop protection companies with our farmer members. We've created fertilizer companies, and one of the pillars that we have is ag technology, because I think that's going to transform markets and the livelihood of farmers and help consumers get what they truly want from their food system. So that's what we've done. We're utilizing techniques, and I think one of the best tools that we're going to have to do that is blockchain and the crypto economy. So I've been spending a lot of time on that over the last number of months. But more importantly, I think for the AgTech group here is because we have a management team that represents 10,000 farmers across Canada and some farmers in the US, we can be a gateway for that technology to be utilized on the farm. We have a number of products and systems that we're using currently, but getting farmer adoption is key, and understanding what farmers need is something that takes a fair bit of understanding about farmers. Just one more comment. If you ask a farmer what's the best technology they've ever had, they will tell you one of three things. It's either been air conditioning, grain augers, or hydraulics. So we've got a little ways to go to be able to bring in some of the new technologies that are coming from the valley and Israel and other great places around the world into use on the farm.
Very good. Well, all right. My name is Gonzales. I work for Scheid Vineyards. We're out of the Salinas Valley. We manage around 4,200 acres of vineyards. That's 41 different varieties. Main being Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, the Cab, Merlot, and then anything else in between there. We are a family-owned business, publicly traded. So our owners are our majority shareholders. They started the business as, actually where a lot of you guys are in venture capitalists in other industries. And in 1972, they decided that I need to put my money somewhere, and what better thing of having a 5-year write-off in putting grapes in the ground. So that's what started the vineyard. Worked directly off of large grape contracts with some of our very profound names in the industry, and those eventually ran out. And then in the early 2000s, 2004 to be exact, decided to build a winery. So now they're not only just growing grapes, they're producing wine for the bulk market or custom. And then just a couple years ago, 4 years ago, we've integrated now into case goods. So in 4 years, we went from a 30,000 case, very luxury brand specific with Scheid Vineyards to upwards of 600,000 cases with 40 different labels. So we are very unique in terms of we have control of crop to bottle, and then where everything in between. So I started as an intern with the company in 2009 when I was still in school, and brought geographic information systems to ag in our company, and we've just been moving ever since. So integration of technology and elimination of paper, and evaluating our current process and where we can utilize technology in order to gain efficiencies and become better at making money. So that's where we're at.
All right, so kind of setting the stage here, we're going to talk about a number of different things around kind of product fit, and kind of look at it from a startup point of view and investor point of view on where you should be as you go through your development and sales cycle. So these questions are interesting because we have startups and people that help support technologies as well as growers on the panel, so everybody will have a little bit different view. But I'll start with kind of company stages. So there's different farmers and different support structures that you'll use as you go through your development process and go-to-market strategies in your company or your investments. And so to kind of start with, if each one of you want to say a little bit about where you're interested in either bringing a product to certain types of growers from the startup side, or where as a grower you are interested, or as someone who integrates technology, where you're interested in seeing startups come to you with a technology. Is it, hey, I have an idea, does this work? Is this a good thing to chase down? Or is it, hey, I have 50,000 customers around the world, and I'm just looking to grow my business. So let's start with that, kind of setting the stage.
So startups approaching. It's kind of sickening in a way.
That'll get us there.
Lots. We, a lot of times I felt like we were the place that startups came to either succeed or completely fail. And actually, some of the technology we have was formerly of startups that we've hacked into because they no longer exist, so that we can continue to go. Just like, you know, we'll keep a tractor running for as long as we can with Ford, McCormick, John Deere, you name it, parts. We keep it going. So really, right now, from our standpoint, we're beyond the you know, hey, can we meet and can I get some insight from you? It's like we could probably just press play on something and, you know, or send out an audio tape to somebody to hear that. Just been over and over and over again, and many never listened. So I don't know how that structure goes. If when you get a venture capitalist in there, all of a sudden all your ideas get funneled toward a certain goal, you know, sales, but never product success. From our standpoint, we've developed an RFP, we've developed standards, we have very strict guidelines in terms of accepting a new technology. A lot of it revolves around ownership of data, because it seems like that's a revenue stream. And just talking to one of our fellow growers, it's like you could spend 100 years next to your neighbor farming, and you're not really going to know what yield they're actually getting. So farmers tend, you know, every year we go about trying to achieve the same goal, but have to find a new way of doing it because there's so many uncontrollable aspects out there to farming outdoors. So we're more at terms of integration because the same technology might not work year in, year out. So it has to be flexible. It's not conceptual anymore. Their continuous soil moisture probes are almost like drip tape now. They're dispensable. So am I answering any questions right now?
So you want to look at technologies that are more developed and you're pretty confident will be around, and if they aren't, you can hack them.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, yeah, we're going outside of industry, looking at off-the-shelf stuff that things have been alive in the marketplace for a long time and are going to survive with or without ag. So, you know, controls, industrial control environment, radio networks, things like that are already have the R&D and backing behind it that, you know, doesn't need venture capitalists to or maybe they do in order to have a spinoff, but that's where we're very narrow now.
And I'll add to that a little bit. A lot of farmers the perception is that a lot of farmers are older, they're slow to adapt technology. I would say they're slow to adapt bad technology. So agriculture is a relational business that's based upon trust. And if you're going to hire someone who just came right out of college and you're going to send them out into the dirt roads of Modesto and Bakersfield and say, have fun, good luck, and you're relying on them for income, you're going to starve. I mean, such a disconnect between cultures. A lot of decision makers in these farming companies are a little bit older, and with that experience comes a lot of wisdom, and they look and see who's coming up to their office or their ranch, and the first thing you say is, I'm so-and-so with this startup, the term startup, and we're venture capital backed, and it's like, well, you might as well just save yourself the gas, and this will be your last trip, because a lot of farmers are just turned off right away. And to what Greg said, what we look for in technology are three things: high quality, low maintenance, and free. So if you're a venture capitalist, that third option isn't a good thing for you. But a fellow on the last panel spoke about don't give your product away. Well, a lot of people didn't hear that in the past. So it's going to be interesting to next 5. And I would just go back to it. I see some maybe students from Cal Poly here. And if you're a venture capital firm, I would be beating down their doors because these kids, you're not going to find someone that has these generational relationships. Maybe you will at a lot of these really prestigious non-agricultural schools, but if you find someone that's intelligent and has generational relationships and they have integrity and they're trustworthy people and they go to a school like a Cal Poly or a Fresno State and they have a good reputation in the area where they're from, I would hire them in a heartbeat because they're going to be the ones who can get into the meetings, not because they have a really fancy degree, but they have the knowledge of who likes what and how people treat folks from the community is a huge advantage. They have a huge advantage just walking in, so I'll stop there.
Well, I have to agree with what both my colleagues have said here, but there's a couple other elements that I'd like to add to that. But first and foremost, again, I think that the agricultural sector and farming in particular will gain more from technology and will be influenced more by technology than just about any other sector. There's so many layers of value that can be created, right from ERP systems to biological systems that we're looking at with Pivot. There's a tremendous amount that can be done that will transform things. And the whole nature of farming as a result of robotics and AI and these technologies will change, and who is farming will change much more quickly than we think over the number of years. So we have to figure out what do we need to meet the needs of those future farmers. But one of the key elements that you have to look at as a new technology provider, in addition to what's been said, is when you're taking a look from a farmer's viewpoint, he is managing a tremendous number of risks. And he's got a lot of places he can put his capital. And if you haven't found a technology that can give him many X, almost exponential, but say 10X of value, that can manage all the other things that can go wrong on a farm, from pests to disease to markets to weather, all the things that a farmer is managing in those risks. And if you can help him overcome some of those, that's great. But you've got to give him a high return in order for him to justify and adopt those technologies. But if you can, farmers will be one of the quickest to adopt those technologies. And we've seen it. I mean, you know, the problem that GMO canola in Canada solved, for example. And we were going over pass after pass with different chemicals to try to control different weeds. I mean, a lot of people do, like glyphosate or GMO, but it solved a major problem for farmers in many different ways. And we adopted that very, very quickly. In just a matter of a few years, 90-some% of the canola grown in Canada was GMO because it solved problems, reduced the amount of overall chemical that was being used, made farming much, much easier, and farmers were quick to adopt. So considering those factors, risk, opportunity cost, farmers never have enough money to do all the things that they'd like to do. Consider it from a farmer's perspective. And the other thing you can do is come visit Farmers in North America. We're a team hired by farmers to vet projects, and we build projects and platforms. So, I mean, come talk to us, and we will get you, if it works, we'll get you through the door of, well, 16 million acres. And we're doing some of these projects right now. One of the companies that we're working with is Taranis, for example, that has developed a technology that came out of the Israeli Mossad or the military. We're flying at 200 kilometers an hour, and somebody mentioned on the previous panel about drones, but here's an application where an unmanned drone flying at 200 kilometers an hour, 8 hours flight time, can handle 10, say 5 to 10,000 acres an hour, and can see a bug on a leaf with that high a definition, move it into deep learning AI, send it to another database that compares what the problem is, and send an immediate decision-making tool to a farmer on an app as to what he needs to do and where he needs to do it in the field. So that's a technology that has tremendous value, and those are the kinds of things that we're looking for. And if I could add one more thing, and that farmers want to be involved in this. So the other thing we do is we take farmer capital and invest into, whether it be a nitrogen project, a fertilizer distribution, or crop protection, generics, or technology, farmers want to invest in it as well so that they have some ownership. They want to own their data, and they want to be able to participate. So I think those are some of the key elements that you have to be aware of.
And maybe to layer a little on top of how we went from a startup founded by two to the company we are today and the kind of partners we've had along the way. I think every season we've been out in the field, we've had a more complex set of partners. So everything that my three fellow panelists have echoed has been critical to the relationships we've built. And I think we've looked for maybe two other dimensions besides trying to build on a foundation of strong relationships. And that's first to match the people we work with at any stage of the company with the risk appetite for that particular grower. There are some growers who are always doing small plot research on a contractual basis, and that's a great fit for the youngest of companies. It's far separated from the product you're actually going to sell. But moving to the stage we are now, where we're really looking at how this integrates into commercial practice, it's looking for those most influential growers who are on the early edge of being innovators and adopters of technology. Taking something that's a nearly baked product and giving them something to put through its paces, but with that shared knowledge that they accept a little more risk than maybe their neighbor. And the trade-off is this is a partnership together on making that product better. And then the second thing we're looking for in those partners is they're going to be with us for the long haul and help talk to their neighbor if we do refine any kinks in the product. And when we go out next year with something even better, they're going to help us share that message. So that's really what we've done for every aspect of the company we've been building, whether it's how we select industrial strategic partners or the investors. And I think it's especially true of the customers. Your earliest customers can be your greatest advocates. So pick the folks who want to share that risk with you and know that it's a spectrum.
Great. So to kind of follow on a little bit more on that piece of the discussion, it got mentioned a couple times, but the value proposition has changed for growers over the last few years. 6, 7, 8 years ago, when I started working with Greg at Scheid and their group and others, the value proposition used to be for a farmer to work with an early stage technology company was that they'd be able to help build that technology and use it in their growing operation once they figured it out and be able to make more money in their day-to-day growing operation in their primary business, and that was the reason that they would invest and spend time with this company. Well, technology people have helped change that, because once they get it nailed down for Scheid, they're going to go to all of their neighbors and say, hey, Scheid's using this, we helped them, or they helped us develop it, they're using it, and it's giving them this ROI, and this is why you should use it as well. So what does that do? That changes the whole aspect of why Scheid or a grower should work with a startup, because they don't get that return on investment from increasing yields or reducing costs or whatever you're doing in their primary business. So another way to look at this that we touched on a little bit was a matter of basically looking at farmers investing from an early stage, as well as being more involved in that early stage. So myself, I've helped companies raise a few from farmers, kind of seed angel rounds, and then that also gives later stage investors more reasons to want to bring in or to invest in those companies in A round or a B round, as well as it gives that early stage kind of early adopter grower a reason to spend time with this company, because they're not going to make money maybe in their primary business, but if this company is really fixing a major need for the industry, they're going to make money off of their investment with this company over the period, because now their neighbor is actually paying, they get a little piece of that investment that they made through that company. So anybody have any input to put on kind of growers' involvement in the early stage and what that value proposition is from an investment standpoint or other?
Yeah, I'll touch on that. So we've been growing almonds for 30 years. We can barely figure out what we're doing now. So I cannot find something we're more unequipped to do than to assign some value to a startup company. That's just not the best use of our resources like you touched upon. So the people who do have the resources and the time to, and the experience to attribute some value that they're comfortable with and being a part of some early stage venture, some of them will probably be successful, but we just have no clue as to how to do that.
So that's a place where what we found when I came to Silicon Valley, everybody said, well, farmers, let's go talk to farmers. But it's not a farmer's job to help teach investors or startups what they need and how to do it. And then it's hard to do diligence. And a farmer, I had to teach farmers to invest in companies. You have to teach them what is a convertible note. This isn't the stock market, and it's not buying land or tractors. So all of the investment tools, we've done a number of different events to help farmers understand what does it mean to invest in technologies. And I think that's something that the collaboration between investors and best ways of investing practices and doing diligence allows farmers to have a little bit better comfort level with investing in companies. So you got to realize they're completely different. You might as well go to China when you're talking to a farmer and you're from Silicon Valley or vice versa. You can't speak the same language. So,
Yeah, the value proposition is, how do you put a value on time? How do you put a value on? It's time. It's time management. A lot of farming is time management. It's your ability to react towards avoiding potential risk or catastrophe, and every day you have a plan, and that plan changes. Forecasting, it's not anything new. So how are you going to improve forecasting? Well, we put a weather station on our ranches, and now you consume our localized data and try and provide forecasting. But this isn't anything that's new to the world in general in terms of technology and there's that the weatherman's always just kind of saying what might happen. So how can we get a little bit closer to what might happen tomorrow? Or a week out. So the value and really, what's the first pitch? Oh, more crop for your drop. Yeah, bullshit. Okay, I'm gonna save you water. Well, I'm not in the water savings business, so thank you. You should. This is how you should be controlling how you put water on. Well, we've been a company for 40 years and we've been doing it this way. Well, why would I change how I manage my irrigation strategy or whatnot, opposed to enhancements of what we're currently doing really well for 40 years to developing a finished case goods of 600,000 cases in 3 years. So understanding just the business prior to even pushing a product and that allowing or having the confidence or just the balls to just say, you know what, we're not the right fit for you. I understand your business and you guys are doing well, but you know what, we're barking up the wrong tree in terms of where our technology is trying to pursue advancements and efficiencies opposed to how you guys are running business. Immediately it's just, no, use ours, this is going to be the best, you're going to be so much more efficient. And honestly, all the technologies that we have in place and that are very efficient and have increased our efficiencies, all it has done is created more work. Farmers not just going to sit around. It's just freeing up more time to go do other things, more high value things. That's how we look at it. So it's a real hard value proposition.
In going back to how you spend your time, I think no one pays attention, or maybe some people in this room do, but you don't see headlines in the newspaper about how productivity in agriculture has come so far, so fast. So when we first started, my grandpa started farming almonds. They were getting 800 pounds an acre, and that was, 30 years ago. And now the average yield, there are orchards in California that can get up to 3,500 pounds an acre or more. And that's happened so fast, and not just in almonds. And they're doing it with oftentimes less inputs. And in the grape business, the Central Valley used to have a lot more wine grapes, and flood irrigated, and maybe 5 or 6 ton per acre. I don't know, maybe someone can adjust those yield numbers, but now some of these yields on these Central Valley wine grapes are 25 ton per acre, and it's unbelievable. So, and they're getting better at doing it. So in 10 to 15 years, it's going to be pretty good.
Yeah, so I think that continues on the point, is that we have looked at applying technologies to things that we're already good at, opposed to things that we're struggle with. Because the golden rule that I live by, which is from Bill Gates himself, is applying technologies to an inefficient process is going to increase the inefficiencies. So it's going to bring them forth, how inefficient you are at doing something, and it's going to make it even worse. But if you apply technologies to something that you're really efficient at, it's going to maximize that efficiency. It's going to increase that efficiency, and it's going to allow you the time and energy to go tackle those things that you're struggling with. So come to me and say, what's your biggest problem? Well, you showing up at my door, right? Trying to sell me something I don't want. Opposed to, hey, let me hang out with your scouts for a week so I can understand how you're doing, because my product is based on scouting or spectrometers or flyovers or whatnot. And let me get to understand what you're doing here. Let me understand the process, and then I will respect your space and say if I think we can help you or not. Otherwise, I'll back away. And farmers love to have the guys that we work that are considered startups are local. We can physically have a sit-down meeting. I can call them at 9 a.m. and they can be there by 1 and have a physical sit-down. You know, the face-to-face time is worth so much in terms of investment. And then I guess another big thing on value is, like, we're getting a product and there's nobody to. UCs aren't teaching people how to read a continuous probe or an advancement of something. They've been very focused on that innovative part of it, getting that new technology out of there. But it's left this huge gap of, so now businesses are adopted technology. Now we got to go hire somebody, and now we got to try and teach them what to do it. So now we're incurring a huge expense in terms of integration from a startup that has this technology that was supposed to, right? You're gonna cut your cost by 50%. Well, I cut my cost by 50%, but actually I reinvested that into developing somebody in order to utilize the technology that we hope is going to stay in for the long run and not jump back to an ag startup, because now they have industry insight and know how to use the technology to sell a product. So there's a lot.
Anybody else have something to add on that?
Well, just, one of the things that any technology company wants to be able to do is get scalability. And certainly if you're going to talk to farmers individually, because relationships are really important, and especially if it's digital farmers like to feel and touch and physical, and they've adopted technologies that have been that way. The digital world is creating a little bit more of a challenge for farmers. And scalability, if you're going to have that relationship, it creates even more of a difficulty. But one of the things that is important is that if you can get a certain group of farmers, that innovators, those first movers, when farmers are doing something and you can identify those, that moccasin telegraph in farming moves very, very fast. So it may look very daunting, but if you can do it the right way, those technologies will take off if you can get the right group working on them. Talking about time, so little bit of a story of how things can go wrong with technology. It's still being used and it's a great technology, but applying GPS and auto steer. So that was one of the great things. So farmers in their field now, Well, actually, I've got two stories. That one isn't such a happy situation, but it has to do with farm safety. But well, both of them do actually. But what's happened is that farmers now can sit in the cab of their combine or their tractor. It's auto steering. They are on their phone or their iPad doing their business. It's created a tremendous amount of time for them. But what can go wrong, for example, is when the first models came out, you had home button. So if you can imagine a 500 horsepower four-wheel drive tractor with 12 tires going down the road, pulling a 60-foot wide piece of implement, and by mistake hitting the home button going 20 mile an hour. This is a true story of what happened with my neighbor. So on the middle of the grid road, that tractor and outfit just does a 360 and is heading back to the farm. Luckily, it wasn't, it didn't cause a problem, but that was one of the things that had to be fixed on that technology, and farmers see that sort of thing. The other one was a farmer auto steer. Hood on the tractor pops open. Well, he's going to slow it down and go out and shut the hood. Well, he hits a rut in the field, bounces off the side of the tractor, is sitting there, and the tractor on its own is going down the field. Gets run over by the tractor, but interesting enough, between the cleats, and then has to run back and catch up to the tractor. So there's so many things that can go wrong with technology that you have to consider that farmers have many different kinds of risks. But again, digital technology is different. Go to the early adopters, get them using it, and the rest will just happen almost like magic.
So we have about 10 minutes left. We haven't covered near what I was hoping to, but I think we've had some good discussions so far. I want to run through real quick, just yes or no. Have you been able to specifically define a dollar amount around an ROI for a technology investment that you have made? Or that, from your example, can you go to a farmer that's farming corn and say, I can save you this much money, definitely guaranteed, no matter what?
Yes.
All right. Brandon?
No, but we'll still be friends.
Absolutely.
Depending on what it is.
Maybe. So one very interesting thing is defining an exact ROI is something a lot of times we just don't have enough data for at this point, or pieces in all the information in one area to be able to say, yes, I know that I made. And we kind of think, we hope, maybe we're investing for the future, but today, what is it? You can make up a lot of numbers, but finding that number in a complex farming operation is pretty difficult. Something Roger touched on when he introduced this panel, and I think we've touched on a little bit here, is we have a lot of companies say, hey, we have a solution, we're looking for a problem. Know what your farmers need. I think we can all agree on that, but again, you also heard that it's not their primary thing that a farmer or someone involved in the industry. At first, when I came into new technology, I said, wow, this is cool. Next thing you know, you have hundreds of companies that want to work with you and investors, and you can't do it all. So you have to be very specific on who you want to work with. And so know exactly what crop, who you're wanting to work with, and I think we can all agree that you absolutely have to know that, and there's people like myself and James that can give you a big head start on that. I always say we can get products and companies 90 to 95% of a finished product without having to talk to a grower, because we've worked with them and we can understand it. That last 5 or 10%, let's work it out. Then you'll have a product. You're not an early company. So just a couple things I wanted to add there, and everybody else can kind of add. But the couple things I wanted to touch base on the last few minutes here was something that's really important, that isn't driven by investors typically, and is also something that I understand being involved in startups, is you have to be laser sighted on what you're doing and what you need to accomplish to get your product to market, to get to the revenue numbers that your investors are looking for and meet your expectations. But at the same time, we're building an ecosystem here, and so you need to know who else you're working with. If you're in a certain technology, you need to know a couple companies and partners that you like upstream and a couple companies downstream, because you may be talking to a farmer and, for example, trying to sell him a truck, and he's looking for a tractor today. If you don't know who you can point him to buy a tractor from, then you're not helping him out. But if you say, hey, this company, I've done work with them, I think that they're really good support. What I'm trying to sell you today isn't what your main pain point is, so you get kicked out of Greg's door, but it's not what they're looking for. So if you know who else is around you and really understand that operation, know who you're talking to, you're going to get a lot farther. So how does a panel feel about just collaboration with other people up and downstream? I know Greg and Scheid, they've pushed me. I was selling them. I tried to sell them irrigation. They said, if you can help replace our weather stations that are failing, maybe we'll get irrigation business. I didn't know that next thing you know, I was going to only be selling technologies, and that's what I've done for a number of years. But once I made them happy there, they said, hey, can you help us with our GPS tracking? Can you look at imagery? Can you help us with plant-based tracking? All of these other things, which sent me down rabbit holes to figure them out to try to help that customer. So as a startup, you need to build an ecosystem around you of other companies, and there's entities like Western Growers and others that are building kind of ecosystems for that. But as you guys in your own areas, how do you look at other people to play with in the ecosystem, and what are you looking for from a service or support standpoint when someone's coming to you? Not to sell a product, because selling a product's easy. Support, long-term vision, partnerships. We heard that relationships is what Ag's built on, and so how do you bring that into your model?
Of course, it's got to be the foundation of how everything is designed and access into the market going forward. That I think the way we look at it is anything we do has to play well with everything that is on the to-do list today, and then somehow it has to make it better or easier or more approachable. And that means the more we can understand where we fit into practice, the more we can listen, the more we have the ability to ensure that when you add our product into that planter, you're not going to gum up the works and prevent the ability to get out and plant seed. So if we do anything that makes something else a little harder to do, we fail, and we're back out on our butt outside the door. And so I think that for us, the conversation starts with listening and really making sure that when we bring something to that farm, it's eliminating a job, or it is compatible with every other type of chemistry and product that's already being used. And that's just table stakes for being in the conversation. And once we've done enough listening to know that we can begin to eliminate an entire tractor pass through the field or eliminate an entire application of fertilizer, that's where we start figuring out the long-term value and the pricing conversation. But all of that follows from knowing how we integrate and we complement practice.
So integration, that's what we're talking about. And overall, yeah, big picture. So I honestly don't believe there's a big picture solution to any agricultural operations. We use some AgTech programs for capturing, let's say, production, and that's all we use it for, but we pay for a lot of the stuff that they're trying to do. So they're trying to get into writing recs and chemical applications and the scouting and all this other stuff that's not their strong suit. But because they do, it's just you kind of want to just say, just stop. Focus on what you're good at. We're grow grapes, right? We're not getting into the broccoli business. We're not getting into the almond business. We're not doing anything. We're growing grapes. And what else? We integrated, right? What do grapes produce? Grapes produce wine. So, okay, it makes sense to get into the wine side of things. But if your strong suit, one of our first ones was production based. We're trying to get payroll, to seamlessly go into our office so we can get production. Doing that really well. We had a huge laundry list of things that could be enhanced within that, But instead it was like, well, I want to meet your chemical recommendation needs. Well, it's not a need, but then just these just routes that were just complete blinders, and the list of things of what we're actually utilizing was just blind to them. And now it comes to a process of, all right, now that there's more options out there, where can we do to now replace these needs? So by trying to achieve a full farming solution, they are actually working their way out of our operations. So being more specific, finding that niche and really tackling that niche. We internally, we don't use a technology on our entire operations. We have a certain place we go. It's 25 acres. We use it, we try it, we do it, so that it's not affecting our entire operation. So, and those that we're using more and more so are, very, very niche. I am working on scouting, so I physically am taking your paper, replicating it onto an iPad, and they're going to input it into an iPad. It's the only difference is that you're from paper to an iPad. So they're not changing the core concepts in which we've done our specific task. It's just where you're entering it and where it's going and how quickly it's getting to a decision-making process. So integration is huge. I wish more would just focus on one specific thing and then integrate with somebody else who's focusing on something that's complementary to it, and allow that open source, that open source type of environment. Because farmers don't want to get back into, the John Deere era. Whereas if something it breaks on a John Deere now, John Deere owns that code inside that tractor. You don't own the entire tractor anymore. Those relays, that everything that's it's sensing inside of it, you have to go to a John Deere dealer, and bring one of their techs that has that computer that has all those codes in it. That is now you're going to tell us that it has to go through here, it has to go through here, and it has to go. It's deja vu all over again. So ownership of what we are producing, the data, the value, ownership, and that's ours. And it has to integrate with other solutions that we've found that fit our needs, because there's not a single person. You guys are going to be spinning your wheels for an eternity trying to find a full fit solution for farming in general. It's just so specific from acre to acre, that it just needs to be, it needs to fit needs, and there's not one solution to fit those needs.
Yeah, so structure is very, very important. If you take a look at the agricultural sector in North America, and for the most part around the world, and there's some changes. We're starting to see some capital and some large corporate type farming, but by far the massive production occurs in basically a family farm operation. And if you take a look at the numbers, and I've had various universities take a look at cost of production, we've looked at global cost of production, and it's very, very difficult to compete with the family farm operation. So when you take a look at the family farm operation and the structure, integrating and bringing lots of different solutions, because a farmer is a grower first, but he has a lot of things to manage. So part of one of our great initiatives is trying to work on their behalf to put and integrate as many things on a single platform that makes the decision as easy as possible, and then have a backup team of agrologists and services, et cetera, to be able to provide that element of addition to their operations. We have to be very careful about designing things to meet the needs of our most productive, efficient, if we want to maintain food prices at a decent level, that type of farming operation. Because if you get it into an integrated mega corporate closed loop system and you got many layers of workers, the cost of food production goes up dramatically. So integration into something that farmers can use efficiently is great. And finding those technologies that are looking at that can work with you on the business logic is really important to us. And there's not many that are doing it out in the technology fields. You're going to hear from Louis Matisse a little bit later with Grain Chain, when he was doing in blockchain. Those are people that are on the ground trying to find real solutions for farmers that can fit into their operations and make a big difference. So those are the kinds of things that we want to integrate into our platform so that we can maintain the structure of the most efficient farming unit in the world, and that's the family farm.
Yeah, and I would agree on that point. So as corporate farms get larger, I'd say the trend over time is to get a little bit heavier on the overhead side. And our thought is, miraculously, when you hire people, they always get ideas to hire more people to help them do their job. So if you're like a private equity group and you think you're going to make a lot of money going out and buying these family farms and stripping away the fat, well, there's not much fat there. There's just not. So there are farmers who have over 30,000 acres of productive assets, and there are no executives. It's like a one-man show out there. So a lot of the farmers live on the farm. You don't want to live on the farm and compete with them. So that's a tough one. But going back to how you find the right early adopters to utilize technology, I would say the people that come to you that have already recognized what their problems are and have done some due diligence on you and your reputation and your track record of helping their neighbors, those are going to be some good relationships to keep. I think when you try to push your product on growers, that's where you can get into some trouble. But when growers like you guys find someone like you to work with and they tell you, this is our problem and we know you can solve it, that relationship will be fruitful over time.
So we're running up on the clock. We have a couple minutes left here. I think I'll take a question, and then I think most of us are sticking around here the rest of the day. So any other questions, we're happy to take offline or in the future. So any quick questions from the audience? Yes, ma'am.
This is kind of more of a comment, but also a question to the panel. My name is Sarah Nagareed. I'm with the California Farm Bureau Federation. We represent over 40,000 farmers throughout the state. So this is kind of just perspective also from the farmers throughout the state and what we hear from them directly. The comment would be, you were talking about networking and collaborating with other startups when you reference the truck and someone potentially looking for a tractor. Similarly, I would encourage everyone in the room and also on the panel to collaborate with Farm Bureau because the counties each have a Farm Bureau presence, and a lot of our growers come directly to us and are telling us exactly what forms of technology they are needing to enhance their farm production. And then the other comment I just wanted to make is that we are constantly hearing about the need for more automation and mechanization due to the labor shortages that are impacting our operations. So I'd just be curious to speak to anyone in the room, what sort of developments are happening there, and also just to hear any thoughts from the panel and if they have any sort of recommendations or ideas that they want to present to Farm Bureau members as well, because I would say that's the #1 need that we are hearing from the 40,000 farmers that we represent in California.
So yeah, thank you for bringing that up. There are a lot of resources, strawberry commissions here, Almond Board, you have Western Growers Association, PMA, that has an event in Monterey today around technology. There's a lot of different other resources that you can kind of lean on and help you understand what's happening in those specific regions. And so, and they're all starting to get more and more into having people dedicated to technology, not just looking at legislation and a lot of things that they've done in the past, but really looking at how they can help farmers integrate technology. So there are a lot of different resources out there, and you got to start somewhere. So anyways, I think we're pretty much out of time. I'd like to say thank you to the panel. Thank you to everybody for spending some time listening to us blab on, and I hope that you got some good insights, and enjoy the rest of the event here.